Congressman Lazarette, thanks for joining us this week.
Yep.
So there's actually things happening here in D.C. Contrary to the prevailing wisdom that nothing was going to occur the rest of the year, we actually have stuff to talk about. I wanted to lead off with tax extenders that were considered by the Ways and Means Committee this week in the House. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, there's 55 provisions of the tax code, commonly known as tax extenders, that have or will soon be expiring. And we've talked before about Chairman Camp, the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, rolled out his vision of comprehensive tax reform. That sort of sat for a little while, was criticized from everybody, which probably means he's onto something. But the expectation was, as we get into May, then both the House and the Senate are going to deal with some very important provisions of the tax law when it comes to business in particular. And so the action this week was on the House side. We had talked before about the Senate identifying 41 of them that they were going to talk about. On the House side, they moved forward on 6, and probably the key ones in that folks would be interested in from a business perspective are, one, the research and development tax credit, that you have the opportunity to deduct that, and then also depreciation expensing for the purchase of new equipment, sort of the accelerated depreciation for new equipment purchase that obviously is intended to help manufacturing.
Well, and the House they've taken a different approach. While in the Senate they've been talking about a 2-year extension, Camp actually is trying to make some of these, the 6 that you talked about them taking up this week, permanent.
Yeah. Which is, if they can do it, you obviously have to find the money because of the way things are scored here. But that would be a big step. I mean, if for instance, a company doing business in Ohio knew that the research and development tax credit was going to be available in every tax year and not just next year and maybe the year after, you can actually do some planning, God forbid. And so I'm a big fan of what Dave Camp is attempting to do. The question is going to be whether he can drag some of this stuff over the finish line and find the necessary offset to make them permanent, which is, it's this goofy accounting system that really puts everything into a cocked hat because, if you just do an extender for 2 years, that has a certain price tag. If somebody has to expense it out over the forever because it's permanent, people will say, oh, you're blowing a hole in the budget and so forth and so on. And so I think permanent is better, and I commend them for looking in that direction.
Well, while extenders was moving forward, something else did not move forward, which was the minimum wage increase in the Senate. That came as no surprise to anyone. I think if there was any surprise, it was the fact that only one Republican voted to move forward on debate on a minimum wage increase. Yeah. Susan Collins' compromise approach wasn't going anywhere. Harry Reid and Tom Harkin, who are the author of the Democratic bill to raise it to 1010, don't seem interested in negotiating at all. Is this really purely about politics at this point?
Yeah, this is about having the issue going into the November election rather than actually trying to find something that's palatable. There were a couple of Republicans that probably would have dealt with them, not to go, to 1010 in this period of time, but to do something on it. But as we've indicated before, you're not going to hear much from the political parties except 2 things. The Republicans are going to talk about the Affordable Care Act and what they consider to be a bad piece of legislation, a disastrous rollout, increasing the expense on a lot of Americans who buy health care. And the Democrats are going to talk about income disparity. And so they will talk about the extension of unemployment benefits, which we've talked about before. And they will, in fact, say that, the Republicans don't want people who work at minimum wage jobs to make a decent living.
Last week we talked about the Keystone XL pipeline, and we talked about the administration's decision to delay indefinitely the Keystone pipeline. This week we hear for the first time that Harry Reid, the majority leader in the Senate, may actually allow a vote on the Keystone XL pipeline. There's some question of whether or not this would be an actual binding vote or a kind of ceremonial sense of the Senate. Why would Harry Reid be up for kind of almost embarrassing the White House by having this vote?
To protect some of his members. Again, we've talked before that of the 33 senators that are up for election, the Democrats have the greater exposure, and a lot of the pundits here in town are thinking that the Republicans will pick up the 6 seats necessary to become the majority party in the Senate. And so there are senators in red states where Mitt Romney carried the state, Arkansas and Louisiana and North Carolina. And so this would be an opportunity to afford those 6 or 7 senators a cover vote. Manchin, even though he's not up, but in West Virginia, the person running for Jay Rockefeller's seat in West Virginia wants some place to go to say that she is supportive of the Keystone Pipeline because it resonates down there. So it would be a cover vote. It would be a political vote. And for that reason, I doubt that it's going to be binding. I think it's going to be one of these sense of Congress things, but we'll see.
Right, well, that in a quarter will get us a newspaper, right?
That's exactly right.
Well, the last thing I want to talk to you about, something that's actually we've mentioned before, and it actually seems like we're starting to see some movement on it, and that's the highway bill. Talk to us a little bit about what's going on right now.
Well, the bad news is the projection out this week is that the Highway Trust Fund, which is where the money comes from to fund the federal highway program, is now scheduled to go bankrupt in August, and some people say it could be sooner than that. And what that basically means is you don't have a federal highway program. Money's not going out to the states to build roads and bridges and repair potholes after this horrible winter. So the news, Barbara Boxer, a senator from California who is sort of heading up the effort over in the Senate on the Public Works Committee, is going to roll out any moment, I guess, a 6-year reauthorization of the highway bill, which is great news because that's what's been missing, the predictability, just like on the research and development tax credit, some predictability so that communities can say, I don't have to worry about what's going to happen, next month and where the program's going to be. I can look 6 years down the road and actually do some smart planning. So while that's the good news, the bad news is she has no suggestion as to how to pay for it. and so where people are going to be left grappling is again, and if you asked me to bet you a buck, I would bet you a buck that we're going to have a short-term extension of the highway program, 8 or 9 months, get us past the election, maybe into the beginning of 2015, before people get serious. But like so many problems here, all it does is delay the inevitable. Somebody is going to have to say, we're going to raise the gas tax, we're going to go to vehicle miles traveled, we're going to figure out some innovative way, and there's a couple of them floating around town, but an innovative way to restore the Highway Trust Fund to balance. And if not, this is going to be a tough place to be.
Final question. Voters go to the polls in Ohio on Tuesday. Any predictions on what we're going to see on Tuesday? I know there are a couple races that you're paying close attention to.
Well, there aren't very many sort of contested primaries, if you will. I mean, on the Democratic side for governor, Ed Fitzgerald has a couple people running against him in the Democratic primary, but he's the prohibitive favorite, as are most of the major party candidates on the statewide ballot. I don't expect any big news that an incumbent or a front-running Democratic challenger has somehow been displaced. The race that most people in our part of the world are watching is my old congressional seat, the 14th District of Ohio, where Congressman Dave Joyce is squaring off against State Representative Matt Lynch. And yeah, I think Dave Joyce will be renominated and get in then to the general election.
Well, we'll look forward to seeing how accurate your prognosticating was next week.
I think I've done that one pretty well.
I think you probably have too. Thank you once again, Congressman LaTourette.
You bet.